The Supreme Court finally begins oral arguments on nationwide injunctions. Walmart announces price hikes as President Trump concludes a whirlwind Middle Eastern tour. And former FBI Director James Comey makes a post about 86ing the president. I'm neither
Bradley Devlin
nor
Virginia Allen.
I'm Tony Kinnett, back from Dallas to tell you that it is Friday, May 16th, 2025. This is the Daily Signal's top news in 10. The Supreme Court of the United States has begun oral arguments over the case regarding the president's explanation and interpretation of the 14th Amendment of the United States, specifically birthright citizenship, in which an individual born within the borders of the United States is automatically granted citizenship, no matter whom their parents are or how long they have been here. Unsurprisingly, the conversation quickly moved into the area of district court federal injunctions, in which district judges around the country have levied major injunctions, freezes, stays, pauses, and the like in order to suspend actions by the executives and administrations since the 1960s. Liberal Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson argued that it would make things a lot quicker for the courts if district judges were allowed to simply issue injunctions whenever they pleased.
I would think we'd want the system to move as quickly as possible to reach the merits of the issue and maybe have this court decide whether or not the government is entitled to do this under the law. Wouldn't having universal injunctions actually facilitate that? It seems to me that when the government is completely enjoined from doing the thing it wants to do, it moves quickly to appeal that, to get it to the Supreme Court, and that's actually what we would want. What I worry about is similar to what Justice Kagan points out, is that if the government is saying no lower court can completely enjoin it, it actually means that the government just keeps on doing the purportedly unlawful thing, and it delays the ability for this court to reach the underlying issue.
Justice Amy Coney Barrett got a little bit lost in the weeds, arguing about when it would and would not be appropriate to follow an injunction issued by a federal district judge, despite whether or not that was in the judge's constitutional authority or not.
Opinions and judgments here. Did I understand you correctly to tell Justice Kagan that the government wanted to reserve its right to maybe not follow a Second Circuit precedent, say, in New York, because you might disagree with the opinion?
Our general practice is to respect those precedents, but there are circumstances when it is not a categorical practice. It is, and that is not
this administration's practice or the longstanding practice of the federal government. And I'm not talking about in the Fourth Circuit, are you going to respect a Second Circuit? I'm talking about within the Second Circuit. And can you say, is that this administration's practice or a longstanding one?
As I understand it, longstanding policy of the Department of Justice. Yes, that we generally, as it was phrased to me, generally respect circuit precedent, but not necessarily in every case. And some examples might be a situation where we're litigating to try and get that circuit precedent overruled and so forth.
Well, okay, so I'm not talking about a situation in which, you know, the Second Circuit has a case from 1955 and you think it's time for it to be challenged. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in this kind of situation. I'm talking about this week, the Second Circuit holds that the executive order is unconstitutional, and then what do you do the next day or the next week?
Generally, we follow those.
So you're still saying generally?
Yes.
And you still think that it's generally the policy, long-standing policy of the federal government to take that approach?
That is my understanding.
Okay, so, but it sounds to me like you accept a Cooper versus Aaron kind of situation for the Supreme Court, but not for, say, the Second Circuit. Like where you would respect the opinions and the judgments of the Supreme Court, and you're saying you would respect the judgment, but not necessarily the opinion of a lower court.
And again, I think in the vast majority of instances, our practice has been to respect the opinion as well, in the circuits as well, but my understanding is that has not been a categorical practice in the way respect for the precedents and the judgments of the Supreme Court has been.
So you're not hedging at all with respect to the precedent of this court?
That is correct. I believe the quotation from our application directly addresses that, and we stand by that completely.
Okay.
And originalist Justice Clarence Thomas took the opposite position as Ketanji Brown Jackson, arguing that the United States had gotten along quite well without federal district sweeping injunctions all the way through to the 1960s and then ramping up in 2007.
General, when were the first universal injunctions used?
We believe that the best reading of that is what you said in Trump against Hawaii, which is that Wirtz in 1963 was really the first universal injunction. There's a dispute about Perkins against Lukens Oil going back to 1940. And of course, we point to the court's opinion that reversed that universal injunction issued by the D.C. Circuit and said it's profoundly wrong. Now, if you look at the cases that the either party cite, you see a common theme. The cases that we cite, like National Treasury's Employment Union, Perkins against Lukens Oil, Frothingham and Massachusetts against Mellon, going back to Scott against Donald, and all of those are cases where the court considered and addressed the sort of universal, in that case, statewide issue of provision of injunctive relief. So when the court has considered and addressed this, it has consistently said you have to limit the remedy to the plaintiffs who appearing in court and complaining of that remedy.
So we survived until the 1960s without universal injunctions.
That's exactly correct. And in fact, those were very limited, very rare, even in the 1960s. It really exploded in 2007 in our cert petition in Summers against Earth Island Institute. We pointed out that the Ninth Circuit had started doing this in a whole bunch of cases involving environmental claims.
After posting solid first quarter sales, Walmart has announced that it will be raising prices due to tariff costs, saying that they can't withstand the amount of pressure from the tariffs and trade wars.
That's the crystal ball that all retailers wish they had right now, is to try to figure out where tariffs are going to be at what point in time so they can manage their inventory flow. We, importantly, are continuing to flow inventory. We want to have products on shelves for customers and members when they want to buy them. So understanding what that demand is going to be, though, is pretty challenging. We've not seen a period where you've had prices go up this high, this quickly. We're well equipped and experienced in dealing with elasticities or price increases that are going up 2 or 3%, but not 30%. And so understanding by category, by item, what the demand is going to be is really important to making sure that you have the right amount of inventory in the right places at the right time.
The President of the United States concluded a major portion of his Middle Eastern tour by securing a $243 billion deal between the United States and Qatar through the purchase of jets through Boeing, as well as other industrial economic options, and locked in a $142 billion defense deal with Saudi Arabia. The over $1 trillion of investment into the United States is considered a record number of economic deals in such a short amount of time. The President of the United States has also announced that he will be leaving the Middle East, heading to Destination Unknown. Kevin O'Leary, the popular Shark Tank host, as well as a major business and economic mind, gave what I believe to be one of the most accurate assessments of Trump's Middle Eastern tour, as well as how this relates to the U.S.-Chinese trade war.
Really, what's going on with this trip are two things. One is China. He doesn't want China to develop a relationship in what I call the Middle East Circle of Friendship, and that is Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. And then you ask yourself, why are all these AI guys with him? What's with that? And I'll tell you what it's about. At the end of this week, he has a meeting in Abu Dhabi. And what's happened in the last 2 years, maybe it's taken 3, but U.S. is number 1 in AI development and spending. Number 2 is China. Number 3 now, and very advanced in certain verticals, is the United Arab Emirates. They are so far ahead in many different verticals. And he wants to see that cooperation on AI be removed from the China model. Because remember, there was talk about the UAE starting to talk to China about AI. He doesn't want any of that. He wants these companies to form very strong bonds in AI. And when we get later this week to the UAE, that's what you're going to hear about. This is crucial. So China and AI, and of course, all this money talk's fantastic. But we're in an economic war with China, and he is cutting them off at the pass in the fastest growing region on earth, the Middle East.
And former FBI Director James Comey caused a major controversy when he released an Instagram post yesterday evening, quote, "cool shell formation on my beach walk." He showed a picture of shells he presumably arranged himself, spelling out 8647. President's son, Donald Trump Jr., said, quote, "James Comey casually calling for my dad to be murdered. This is who the Democrat media worships, demented." 86 is a classic American term often used in law enforcement, the military, and cooking to suggest getting rid of something, removing it, getting it out of here. After deleting his original post, Comey posted, quote, "I posted earlier a picture of some shells I saw today on a beach walk, which I assumed were a political message. I didn't realize some folks associate those numbers with violence. It never occurred to me, but I oppose violence of any kind, so I took the post down, end quote. It's interesting here that Comey seems to allege he wasn't the one who organized the picture of those shells in order and just happened to stumble upon a post of 8647 in the sand. Before you go, head down to the description and make sure you're subscribed to the Tony Kinnett Cast, as well as Bradley Devlin's The Signal Sit Down and Virginia Allen's Problematic Women. Thanks very much to both of them for hosting while I was out of state. We'll be back this evening at 7 p.m. Eastern to close out the week only the way we know how. I'm Tony Kinnett, and this has been the Daily Signal's Top News in 10. Take care.